Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Outlook and discussion for Tuesday, June the 12th, 2018. Hope you're having a great day. I feel a lot better today. Got even more sleep last night, and I think I'm about 98%, maybe even 99%, all the way back from that terrible, annoying summertime cold. And I really look forward to stop talking about it very soon. All right, so we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to discuss Invest Area 91L in the Atlantic, I think it's 91, and of course Hurricane Bud in the Eastern Pacific, and a couple of things I want to show you from some other experts around the world, literally, at least one of them, for later on in the hurricane season. So there's a little nugget waiting for you at the end here, a little carrot that I'm going to dangle for you to make sure you watch till the very end. Of course, on YouTube, you can just skip, but hopefully you won't do that. It's like reading the end of the book first. All right, so let's get on with it, see what's happening out there in the Atlantic Basin. We do have this little yellow X, 20% over the long term. This is what the National Weather Service was at Tallahassee referred to as a GFS-acane, and the Global Forecast System really blowing this up over the last couple of weeks into something rather significant that had a lot of people up in arms all along this region, because people were posting deterministic output model runs of snapshots at days 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. You've heard this before. And so what is it? Well, it's just an area of cloudiness, showers, and thunderstorms, and it's over the northwestern and western Caribbean Sea. You have a sharp surface trough in the region, an area of convergence basically, and there's an upper level trough to the west of that. And overall, the conditions just are not favorable for this to develop into a hurricane like the GFS was suggesting, so many runs in a row. Nevertheless, it is a disturbance that we need to keep an eye on. Heavy rainfall associated with it. Andre, here in Jamaica, one of our, I hear from Andre a lot, and I like that. That interaction is great, not complaining. He tells me what's happening down there, and when a hurricane heads his way, that's going to be very important. It's just a matter of time, right? So I'm asking you, Andre, if you're getting any rain from this over Jamaica. Over in the Caymans, looks like it, some convective activity over the Cayman Islands, moving up towards the southern coast of Cuba. But overall, really not much impetus to get this thing to develop. Upper level winds are too strong. Land interaction over the next few days as this moves across the Yucatan and vicinity, also going to be a factor. And unlike Harvey last year, which had a similar, well, remember Harvey started out here and then kind of died away for a little bit and then came back to life in this vicinity. Unlike Harvey, the pattern over this area is not going to be ripe for development. Harvey was moving from a negative area of development here and here to a positive area of development here. And we could see that on the modeling last year. So this is not a Harvey setup. It's June. You have a lot of strong southwesterly flow over this area from this upper trough that's there, so forth and so on. So don't worry about this becoming another Harvey in terms of intensity. But the rainfall, as this system moves up, and I'll show you this on the GFS in a moment, yes, the same GFS that we have besmirched for indicating hurricanes in the long range, but I'm not going to show you the long range. It's more the close range stuff, 3 to 5 days out. It's pretty reliable. And we're not going to talk about model wars here, but it is enough of a reliable model to at least get my points across as we talk about the coming days. So this area through here, maybe some heavy rainfall coming up. We will get to that. In the Eastern Pacific, we do have Bud, and this is going to be a problem for the Baja and northwest Mexico, and then eventually a good deal of the southwest United States. I have been talking about this for several days. It's not hard to see when you can see it in the global modeling, and it's going to happen. You'll see. Not a hurricane for the Baja. I saw some bemoaning about that on the internet as well. A few headlines talking about a major hurricane targeting Mexico. Well, it's not. Water temperatures are too cool up in this region, and Bud is already weakening and will continue to do so. In fact, it's down to 125 miles per hour, and I'll show you the satellite in just a moment. It's really starting to weaken further from there. Then to the south and east, well to the south of the Gulf of Tehuantepec, which is right here, is another disturbance which has a low chance of development. The phase of the Madden-Julian oscillation and the convectively coupled Kelvin wave that's moving through this region will move on, and it'll leave in its legacy Aletta and Bud, and an increase in convection over here that we have been talking about with 91L, but that's probably it. It's not going to trigger a series of hurricanes in the Atlantic. Maybe if it happens in August, and especially the western basin, and we'll get to that in a moment, part of that little carrot that I was dangling for you for later. So a satellite picture, what's what? Well, the yellows in here kind of blend in with the cloud cover, so I will outline it in blue as to where we are talking about, and this is not the best color blue, but it'll do for now. Eastern North America, the west coast of Mexico, so forth and so on. There's our disturbance. 91L, this is all dry air. Let's just switch over to red for goodness sakes. All this dry air out here, not going to allow anything to develop. And then here's Bud, and just this large area overall. Just kind of look at this as one giant envelope of upward motion and energy as part of this favorable Madden-Julian oscillation, somewhat amplified, and this convectively coupled Kelvin wave, and we will talk about that more on Thursday as to what exactly that is, and all of that pushing through, creating all this convective activity, which led to Aletta and Bud in the East Pack. Speaking of Aletta, there's the skeletal remains of Aletta there. Terrible way to put it, but that's, sort of true. It's just a low cloud swirl. And then we have Bud here, which is really starting to drop the convective process because it's moving over cooler waters into a more stable air mass all throughout this area, and it'll eventually dissipate, not before bringing at least part of its moisture and circulation up towards the Baja, across the Baja, into the Gulf of California. And you see all this rich black color through here. That's heat in the infrared signature here. Very hot over the Sonoran area, northwest Mexico, southern Arizona, southwest New Mexico, western Texas, and a lot of this moisture, due to this huge upper level ridge over here and a trough carving out over the west coast, will get funneled up through this area into the southwest U.S. and beyond. And we will look at that in more detail in a minute. I want to go back here. I neglected to show you the track map, and that's important. There it is. So you don't usually see even post-tropical, and that's what the white D is, post-tropical. It's beyond, it's kind of like it's lived beyond its lifespan, post-tropical cyclone, and in this case a depression in southern Arizona, the remnant circulation. But what I want to show you here, weakening towards the Baja, heavy rain threat all throughout this region, mudslides, landslides, rock slides, flash flooding, those dry arroyos out there, the washes, the dry riverbeds, those can fill up very quickly. The monsoon season is, I guess, starting early, even though this is not technically part of the monsoon, I guess. It's just the northward movement of a tropical cyclone. But this really will have some impacts out here. Probably not widespread. It's just not that type of setup. More of a, it'll be a widespread rain event, but not a widespread heavy rain event. There will be isolated pockets to scattered pockets. What does that mean? Well, instead of everybody, it'll just be a few people in a few population areas that will see some flash flooding. So be aware of that. If you live out there and you know about this stuff already, I'm preaching to the choir, which is good, but I just want to make sure you are aware of it. I find it fascinating, and I think it's a little too early. I think this will happen again later in the season, and I do plan on heading out this way later on, if not for the monsoon itself in July, then maybe for a tropical cyclone interaction like we saw with Norbert and Odile in 2014, later in August or September. So we'll get to that when the time comes. All right, so the modeling, this is where it's going to be really interesting, folks. A good deal of the envelope pushing this into the southwest U.S., and that's going to bring a lot of moisture, and this will extend all the way up into Colorado and maybe even parts of Wyoming. So I don't know what that was. Something crashed in the house. So be mindful of that. It's probably one of the cats. You know how they can be. Be mindful of that. Pay attention. Tropical moisture in a desert environment, you can get these big thunderstorms that pop up, high base thunderstorms that create lightning strikes with very little rain. This will be a problem, so please keep on top of it, and I will be reporting on it daily, of course, here. Now, this will be one interesting way to keep track of what happens with bud, and we'll talk about that in a moment. First, a little bit of a vorticity showing up, of a signature from 91L. Not much, but a little bit, as you can see right there. It's still elongated, though, kind of connected down here off of Venezuela. We'll watch that, but there's just not much evidence in the whole model package that this is going to develop very much. It's just not in the cards. Now, what I was saying here for bud, right now, very solid vorticity signature, very strong and intense cyclone, 125-mile-per-hour winds. So let's watch over the coming days as this moves north, and if this has enough of a signature left as it moves into northwest Mexico, that really will tell me that this could bring a lot of moisture up into this area. I think that'll be fascinating to watch and see as this dwindles away. Even with very weak Aletta over here, still a very pronounced vorticity signature, as is this other disturbance south of the Gulf of Tehuantepec right there. All right, so amazing with these different tools that we have and how we can track things. And I will be watching this closely as it moves up and then into this area for our friends out west. Alrighty, moving right along, the modeling. This is the GFS, 5,000 foot level, huge ridge over the North Pacific, and there's some troughing that's going to dig in off the west coast. It doesn't show up very well here, but here's the western part of the Bermuda High, pretty large overall feature, and then kind of a weakness in between, if you will, between those two ridges. So let's put this into motion up here, Mark. And there's Aletta, don't worry about that. There's Bud. And watch over here, very little signature from the GFS related to 91L. The flow does switch to the southwest to northeast. So there will be, make no mistake about it, a slug of moisture that gets pulled up into Texas and the Gulf side of Mexico, along the Gulf of Mexico. So there will be some rain, but no organized tropical system. That is going to be where Bud comes into play in northwest Mexico there as we go towards 96 to 100 hours. It loses its identity, kind of gets stripped away, as you can see there. Let me speed this up. I think it's really neat to watch. This is part of the weather geek in me. See Bud advancing there, comes up towards the Baja, and it's still very well pronounced in its vorticity signature. And then it crosses, weakening, of course. Lots of heavy rain, though, all across this region. And then look what happens. It comes into that dry, arid Sonoran desert, and bam, it just goes away. But the upper level moisture, the mid-level moisture, will continue to stream northward into this region. And I'm going to say it again, you better be ready for that, because it's impossible to know exactly who and when things will impact, all right? So just be alert. So I'm going to bring me back up for a second. So, come on, try one more time. There I am. Hi, I'm back. So these next things I want to show you relate to the rest of the season. Actually, that's not true. Hold on, let me do one more thing. I got ahead of myself. This is the precipitable water. This kind of goes to what I was talking about a moment ago with Bud, fairly high. I mean, this is 3 to 5 times the normal in this region. If you know statistics, we're talking 3 to 5 times the standard deviation of what normally would occur out here. But look how this also gets pulled up into the interior over the Rockies, all right? So Colorado, maybe even up through Wyoming, and any frontal activity that comes down colliding with that could make matters worse. And let me kill this window. So this is from Dr. Michael Ventris, and he did a great job showing this animation. And you see the Gulf of Mexico precip coming up from the disturbance 91L, and this is the European operational, and this is the total precipitation over the next 4 or 5 days, 6 days, something like that. But notice too, as it starts over again, a lot of influx of moisture here to the southwest, and then that gradually shifts east as that trough comes in and tries to push everything up and around this ridge. And that's what's so neat about this, in my opinion. You can really see the outline of the ridging here, and it changes. It's obviously going to change over time, But there you go, lots and lots of moisture coming in. All right, so this next thing I want to show you relates to the rest of the hurricane season. And I thought this was really interesting. There's been a lot of talk about how cold the main development region is. It's the coldest in the satellite era, I guess, or something like that, or since 1982, I guess is more accurate. And that it's going to be a very probable inactive season according to some, or at least not an active season. And I've been talking about, well, be that as it may, you're still going to have these tropical waves coming off. Got to take a water break. It is Fiji water, it's just in a plastic cup today. Those tropical waves are still going to come off and head west. And then, when they get to the western part of the basin, what happens? Well, that's where this first nugget comes in. This is from Ben Knoll, and he is from New Zealand. And he tweeted this, and it really caught my eye. The first part of the hurricane season, according to the UK Met guidance, which, by the way, did a great job indicating the density of last year's tropical cyclone activity. It's not going to be perfect and tell you exactly where, but the UK Met, and it's in my 2017 documentary if you watch it, at the setup part, the January, February, March, April, May, I talk about the UK Met, and it did a very, very good job overall. Maybe the best of the seasonal guidance last year, for what it's worth. So this definitely caught my attention when Mr. Knoll tweeted this, that the UK Met seasonal guidance indicates a sluggish start to the season, which we would expect, but it hints of plenty of in-close Gulf and West Atlantic development late in the season. And what this is showing is an increase in the moisture, the anomalies there, as time goes on, especially through the fall, August, September, October, that kind of time frame. But additionally, not just the precip increasing, and he knows exactly what to look for. It's hard for me to pinpoint on here and tell you this is what this means, but I mean, he knows, so I'm going to respect what he says here, all right? But this part I do totally understand, and I can explain it, that it also, in addition to what he talked about on the precip side, with the indication of higher precipitation at the heart of the season in close to the southeast U.S., indicating tropical cyclone activity more than likely, there is this, what they call, and maybe he got this from Joe Bastardi, the ridge over troubled waters, right? Play on words of that famous song. And what that means is, that noise, the anomalous high pressure, I think there's a cat literally out my door waiting for me, right behind that Duke logo. Feed me, the cat saying. The ridge of high pressure over the northwest part of the Atlantic, northeast United States, northeast part of North America, and I can draw on that right here and show you. Right there, that's the signature. That's too big, darn it. Right in here, sort of this Newfoundland wheel, as they call it. That's another classic look, and that's my point here, is folks like Ben Knoll, Joe Bastardi, there are others out there as well, Dr. Ventris with his work in long-term and long-range climate forecasting, etc. They can pick out these patterns, and we're getting better, people. That's what I really wanted to get at here, but I think the cat at the door kind of threw me off my groove. We're getting better. We're not going to know, hey, a hurricane is more than likely going to affect Wilmington September 9th through the 12th, and we can tell you that in June. That's not going to happen maybe for a long time, if ever. But getting an idea of the overall pattern in these supercomputers, oh, that's going to be a good one. Can I edit that out? These, maybe they are supermodels. They are supercomputer models. They do a really good job at creating these densities that show you means and averages and anomalies, plus or minus, and you can look at all of that and rely on some of these people like Ben Knoll, Joe Bastardi, and others, Dr. Ventris, and there are others coming up through the field, Levi Cowan, and we start to get this picture of what is likely to happen, and then people like Phil Klotzbach and his team at Colorado State can eventually make better forecasts from it. So I think it's interesting, and it's interesting not only in the relative near term that that's coming up in the next few months, obviously, and that can impact people in the western part of the basin, but in the future of hurricane forecasting as a whole. Anyway, there's the carrot. Take it for what it's worth. All right, that's it for me for today. I appreciate you tuning in, as always. A lot to keep up with, of course. The biggest topic, honestly, is going to be Bud, and I'm going to focus on that more than 91L, but I won't diminish the fact that 91L will bring some rainfall to Texas, and we can hone in on that more once the system crosses over the Yucatan and into the southwest Gulf. But don't worry about it developing into anything remotely resembling what the GFS was showing just a few days ago, run after run. I don't think that's going to happen. All right? And with that good news, have a great rest of your Tuesday. Again, thank you for tuning in. I am Mark Setheth for HurricaneTrack.com. We'll talk again tomorrow.